My name is Tim Hodson. I'm the editorial director of Greenhouse Product News and Lawn and Garden Retailer. I sit in a unique position in the industry where I get to see both the production side of the world and also the retail side. So we see a lot of different things going on at different times. So it was fun to put this panel together and do a little homework, do research to figure out what the heck's actually going on out in the marketplace. So, like I said, and I'm a journalist by training. I've been the editor of these two magazines for more than 10 years now. And I've been a journalist for 30 years. But when I put together this program, it was kind of doing the who, what, where, when, why, and how of what goes on in this industry. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. Our panel of experts here, bear with me. Two of the panelists are here. Dr. Bridget Behe, she's been on the faculty of Michigan State University since 1997, and she teaches courses on horticulture marketing and management. She earned her PhD from Penn State and her master's degree from The Ohio State University, but she doesn't like to brag about that, she said. She's a Pennsylvania native. She's conducted nearly 100 consumer and marketing research studies in the area of horticulture, such as the value of good landscaping, the market for the hypothetical blue geranium, and how age and ethnicity influenced gardening purchases. And Bob Friedl, to my right here, has worked at Hicks Nurseries, a 160-year-old full-service garden center located in Westbury, New York, on Long Island. He's been there for more than 30 years now? Yeah. Holy cow. He's their senior buyer of horticulture products. Prior to that, he owned his own nursery. He's a certified landscape professional in the state of New York, and in 2013 was named the Man of the Year by the Long Island Nursery and Landscape Association. Then all the way down to the right there is Paul Hartnett, who is standing in for Marshall Dirks right now. I don't have Paul's full bio here, but he is the sales manager for one of the Proven Winners companies, Pleasant View in New Hampshire. The two missing, as we see up here, Marshall Dirks is the Director of Marketing and Public Relations for Proven Winners, and then Kristi Huffman will be here shortly. She's the Senior Vice President of Horticulture at Multi-Packaging Solutions in Grand Rapids. So that's our panel of experts. We got a good cross-section of expertise here who can comment on our topics today. So let's just start off with some of the good news. The good news is, according to the National Association of Landscape Professionals, 91% of Americans think it's important to live in close proximity to the landscaping, grass, and trees. They like our products. That's the good thing. They like them, they respect them, and it looks like we may have a panelist walking in, so bear with us. So yeah, if people remember a few years back, the Academy Awards, Sally Field saying they really like me. Consumers really like our industry. They like our products, they like what we do for a living. And according to the NALP survey, 84% think it's important to have a well-maintained yard. They appreciate what the products we grow and sell. That's the fun part. And even more good news, 75% of the people in America think it's important just to spend time in their yard. It's good for their soul, it's good for their, and that's a whole different presentation, the benefits of our industry. But what this survey shows is people, it's their lifestyle. They like the lifestyle, they like what these products have to offer, and they want to enjoy the products. But it also creates, we have an opportunity here because they admit they don't know anything about our products. They strongly agree that they don't have the knowledge, or that they have the knowledge. Only a third of the people have the knowledge and skills to keep the plants and lawn looking healthy. So it's a great opportunity for growers and retailers to just educate people on what the products can do and how they can do it. Marshall, you even wore a sport coat. You're making me look bad here. So sit there. Want to give it a quick mic test, Marshall, just to, and Kristi?
Test, test, test.
There you go.
Thank you.
Can you hear Kristi back there?
No.
Test?
There we go.
All right.
Okay, everybody's present and accounted for. Even more good news is 84 million homes in America do some kind of gardening. 7% of all the homes in America do some kind of gardening. I think a lot of times that gets lost in, people take it for granted that a lot of people are taking part in, and I like to say gardening, because as we go through this discussion, gardening means different things to different people. So, but 84 million homes are taking part in this industry. But the not so good news, and you got to take the good with the bad. Over the past 5 years, the average household spent $359 on gardening annually. That was the average annual purchase for the year. 5 years ago, prior to the recession, and that's what kind of knocked us back a little bit, people used to spend $435. So we've lost $76 in average purchase over the past 7 years. But things are looking better, and as the economy's gotten better, I anticipate as the National Gardening Association's survey comes out next year, these numbers are going to start climbing a little bit more again. They're not adjusted for inflation or anything like that. It's just straight dollar for dollar. So we do face some challenges in this industry. Like I said before, people like our products, they like the benefits our products offer, but some consumers are still just afraid to garden. They don't know enough about the process. They think it's hard work. They may not want to garden, but they want to enjoy the products. Or they have less space to garden in. Here's the one kind of weird thing that I've noticed. It's people nowadays have more leisure time to do things. So you think, oh, maybe they'll take part in gardening and stuff like that. They're not. Nowadays they're spending 12 hours a day in front of some kind of a screen. It may be their computer, maybe their TV, maybe their phone, and we'll get into some of these things. But I'll throw this out to any of the panelists. You want to comment on some of these issues that we're up against today?
I think you're right on the first one. The word fear comes to mind for many people, and we've been surveying consumers for the last 12, 15 years at Permanent Winners, and we've got about 1 million people in our database now, and for the last 10 years, the number one thing when we ask them why they do not garden more, it's been that they don't know what to do, that there's a fear of too many choices, and they're just stuck on what to do next. And so they're constantly looking for affirmation, they're looking for how-tos. And one of the things that we were talking about 10 years ago was weekend projects. And now the data suggests, even to another point of leisure time, that now you're talking about 30-minute, 40-minute projects versus 2-day projects. And so, so what that means with plant material, you have larger plants available, things that can be done very, very quickly. Even the word gardening previously in some slides you mentioned, people don't even want to consider themselves gardeners. They're decorating with plants, and they don't care if it's a geranium or a petunia. And so even our signage needs to be affirming that you can do this. And so I think one of the things with the consumer is the people that garden, they're natural nurturers. So they don't want to fail. And they also are pet owners, and they don't want to fail. They have children, they don't want to fail. And so when they look at a product that they're unconcerned, that they don't know that much about, their first thing that comes to mind is, well, I'm afraid to fail with this product. And so, we've had to change our wording and some of the things that we're talking about just to overcome the fear factor, because that's a real barrier to purchasing. So I would agree with these challenges.
But I'd also say too, segueing into that is on the fear piece and the fail piece, as a society, we expect to have a roadmap on what to do. So, this morning at the airport, as I'm picking up the paper, I'm looking at all the magazine covers. Every magazine cover was the 3 steps, to the new diet, 6 make-ahead casseroles to save time. So even outside of our industry, we're programming people, and we as consumers expect quick fixes. Get me from A to B in quick, easy steps. And I think we've got to take that to heart in our industry, because if you look at the instructions that sometimes we give, sometimes we can get very horticulturally sound, and yet that can be very intimidating to my neighbor across the street. So she may not need to know everything. We need to give her the quick, easy on how she's going to succeed, and also remind her that, you know what, if it doesn't work out perfectly, it's okay. It's okay, let's try again, let's do something again.
And we'll grow more. The whole industry will grow more. If the plants die, we'll grow more.
Still, there's a positive spin to that, isn't there?
We need to get them almost to the finish line. We see sales of almost finished tomatoes, not transplants that are in 4-inch containers, but plants that have fruit that's almost ripe. People are more willing to buy those things because it's perceived as less risky. I'm going to get to the finish line a lot faster, and it meets my needs of instant gratification in only 1 or 2 steps.
And well, it's also amazing. Some people light, water, and fertilizer. Some people, that's the 3 steps to growing a successful plant. Those are pretty much the 3, and it's amazing how many consumers don't even realize that, which is easy to educate them on. So.
Tim, there was one other thing that Kristi said. Is she mentioned, on the fronts of these magazines, and I've done the same thing of look at magazine covers. She mentioned that there was a number associated with 3 ways to do this, 10 ways to, and we have, for the last 2 years, we've been putting a number in our social media efforts. 5 best petunias, 5 best dianthus, 2 best whatever, and we found that that whenever we put a number associated with offering a short list of items, that is the #1 most viewed video, #1 most viewed and shared social media outlet. And so as we develop POP signage, the same thing is the same holds true. What are the 5 best grasses? What are the 5 best landscape plants, or 6 best things? Because they really are looking at you and ourselves as experts in this area. They don't want to look at 35 petunias. And so oftentimes that's what we're pushing, as we've got 35 super petunias, but the consumer is saying, hey, just give me a short list. And that has been really, really helpful for some people as well.
Yeah, and the research will show that when you do offer fewer choices, when you narrow it to your best choices, you can actually increase sales rather than having too many choices.
Yeah.
I like to think of selling garden today the way computers have evolved. Computers used to be gigabytes, megahertz, RAM, and all these information things that people were thrown, they didn't know what they meant. Today, you'll buy a computer for gaming, or for business, or for in the kitchen just for doing light email and stuff like that. And we need to present our products as a solution, not a group of products that people don't understand. And having fewer products to create that solution is becoming more and more important. I think the average gardener is disappearing. People who want to know what the numbers on a fertilizer bag mean and what timing insects get taken care of, they're disappearing. Mm-hmm. And the younger people coming in want to have a solution for a problem as simple as possible. Thank you, I'm out the door. That's what we have to start providing.
It's literally a means to an end of some kind, depending
so
on.
if we have a problem, we need a solution.
We have the solution.
We're not selling products.
Right. We're selling solutions. We're selling benefits, right?
And then game.
Right. Okay, so as we've all noticed, the consumer landscape continues to shift. We still have the big drivers. The biggest driver is baby boomers. Millennials, up and coming, and we're going to get into these in a little more detail. The 2 lost generations that really are not participating as much in our industry are Gen X, the post-boomer, 1965 to 1980, and then 2000 on. Gen X, they just had too much going on. It was a turbulent time when they were hitting their prime gardening. So, I mean, they still participate, but they're not as much of a marketing force, I guess, for our industry. And then Gen Z, they're too young, but we will talk about their potential is out there. We just need to figure out what it is and how to nurture that, and we'll discuss that in a little bit here too. So here's the good news, and I think everybody in this room knows it. Boomers, I'm one. We're booming. We're still buying lots of green goods. According to the National Garden Association, last year, boomers bought 51% of all gardening products. And that's the biggest it's ever been, which I was kind of surprised when I saw that myself. Like I say, we always knew it was a force, but I thought that number wouldn't be at its largest now. I thought maybe it would have been larger a few years back. But we know that they're a force, but it's not going to last forever. Their needs and wants are changing. They're retiring. They have fixed incomes. They're downsizing. They don't live in houses as big as they used to. They don't plant as much. They have health issues. If they were avid gardeners that got out there down on hands and knees, as you saw in the previous photo, digging, arthritis kicks in at 50. My knees are killing me right now. I've been walking a trade show all day. So their priorities shift as they get older. But they do have grandchildren, and the seed with some of those grandchildren. So that is an opportunity. The millennial parent in there may not, or the Gen X parent may not have been able to instill a lot of the gardening seed in children, but grandma and grandpa are, which is kind of nice to see.
Yeah, Tim, to that point, I think you're absolutely right of, that they are changing. I think that's sometimes hard to recognize that your number one customer base is changing, and they're going through significant changes. All these things impact how many plants they plant, where they actually plant them. One of the exercises that we've been doing at our consumer events is we ask everybody in the audience to stand up, and we ask everybody who was influenced by gardening before they were 20 years old to remain standing. And so vast majority of this audience, these baby boomers, will still be standing. And then I asked them the question of how many of you are now mentoring someone below the age of 20? And almost half the audience or more of the audience actually sits down. And so they are having an impact, but they need encouragement. And so they also need validation. That just because they don't purchase as much as they used to, it's still that their purchase is important, and they are a great ambassador for gardening still.
A keyword, ambassador.
And so while we talk about chasing the millennials and so forth, these guys are still huge for us for encouragement, for education. And so we actually have divided our events into those who are going after these guys and those who are going after a different audience, a millennial audience. And yet there is good opportunity for crossover, but to validate that they are important, because increasingly they're hearing they're not important, and that they've dropped out of jobs or retiring and so forth, and so a lot of their validation is no longer a part of their life. And so as a product or a brand or a garden center, of validating that they are important and they have a real role, and involving them with that role of mentoring can just be huge, because they are ones who want to donate time. They want to serve others. They do have children, but oftentimes I think the statistics show that over half of their grandchildren live over 3 hours away. So their grandchildren aren't there. So they have time to serve others in other ways. But we have to be diligent in providing those opportunities and not just expecting them to come, but we have to provide real opportunities for them to serve appropriately.
And responding to their needs too, as the lifestyle changes. We need to be aware that they are downsizing in their homes. Many of them are going to managed communities, and this is going to radically change the product mix and the size and how we position specific products. We're going to have watering issues where I don't want that to drip on the neighbor below me, and the scale has to be adapted. And as Tim said, I don't want to get down on my knees that much anymore. So we've got to bring gardening up to their level, or their interaction with plants, to a place and a size and a scale where they're still interested. But in addition, I think a lot of that's going to appeal to the millennial who's living in an urban multifamily dwelling who has issues about water dripping and some other things. So I think there's a lot of ways we can serve both of those groups, but we've got to be aware of the fact that they are changing and what they're changing, evolving toward.
And the whole watering piece, whether it's, water dripping down below you or where do you have water in your landscape? What's interesting is, as we talk about some of the different things, I look at my own, my father, who's in his 70s. And so when I was young, we had beds, right? I mean, at home, we had beds and beds of flowers, and we all helped plant. Then as, times change and the rage is container gardening, and I look at his homes, sure enough, right, most of the gardening or the annuals you see in containers at the front porch, on the back deck. Well, what's interesting is just over the last few years, he's downsized, he's in a smaller home, but what he said to me is, you know what, I have irrigation, which I think, back when I grew up, no one had irrigation. Now in the community I live in, most neighborhoods have irrigation. And as an industry, are we taking advantage of talking about that? If you have irrigation, and irrigation is hitting your beds, what is probably the easiest thing for you to do? If you plant petunias right there, and that irrigation is hitting that, now yes, you have to get down for a little bit and get them in.
Once.
Once, that's the key. So what's interesting is my 75-year-old dad is actually finding today that the easiest way for him to garden is to do beds again. So it's almost kind of like hemlines, go full circle. When you think about the units that we as an industry can gain in everyday sales, he still has containers at his front porch. So the container gardens have not gone away, but what's happened, and those are pre-made now versus him planting them, but what's happened now is he's planting more right in that front entryway, understanding the irrigation's going to hit. I think we have an opportunity to really speak to consumers, going back to what we spoke about earlier in the 1, 2, 3, here's the things that are easy. If we help a consumer understand, you plant this here and then let it go for the rest of the season, that's a powerful message.
One and done. And as we're talking, the boomers are our ambassadors, and they are really, there we go, leading us to the next generation, millennials. Are they the holy grail? It's to be determined, but there's a heck of a lot of opportunity there. Right now, it's the biggest demographic out there. It makes up 25% of the entire U.S. population. Once again, but they just act differently. They wait longer to get married now. They wait longer to buy their first house. They continue to rent, and those kinds of things just delay the typical gardening purchase. But they have that, it now becomes that opportunity for a decoration or decorating purpose, as opposed to planning. Okay, now let's buy a house plant, or maybe it's not bedding plants, but there are opportunities for this demographic. A lot of them still live at home, so if they're living at home, they're not buying plants to plant in mom and dad's house. They're letting mom and dad do that because they're cheap. Another thing we've kind of touched on, these millennials are drawn to urban, regentrified neighborhoods where space is at a premium. So it just changes the whole dynamic of what plants and flowers can offer to them. But these young millennials want to be where the action is, so they're learning how to take part in this.
I think what plays in a role, one of the trends that we were seeing years ago was this urbanization. Mm-hmm. And yeah, we heard about irrigation and all these other things. One of the things that we didn't necessarily consider was the huge need for drought-tolerant shade plants. Our entire line is a lot of sun plants, and we boasted for years of sun, it can take full sun. And now we're actually taking all of our petunias, all of our geraniums, all of our full sun plants, and we're running full shade trials because that's what they can handle. And in a city area, you may be sunny on one side and shady on the other side. And so we are running full trades or trials on everything to see what of these items can actually handle a lot of shade in a dry situation, such as a container, a window box, and so forth. And that was something that we had never ever trialed for in 20 years. So product selection will definitely change due to urbanization.
And it just makes it, once again, it helps guarantee the success. If they don't have to water as much, it doesn't need light. Hey, it grew in spite of whatever I did, as a millennial, so. Oh, sure.
One thing, we're thinking of how to sell products to millennials today. I understand that, but we can't lose sight. These people are so different. Their world is a computer screen and indoors. And I think as they mature, they are going to need more outside. They're going to need more gardening, because human beings we're not robots, although they're kind of acting like robots,
Yeah.
And so there's a future there. We have to nurture them.
Yeah.
And I just want to say one more thing. Everybody's writing off Generation X. At Hicks, we love them. We don't advertise to Generation X. We advertise to a generation that is not yet named. They're children. If you entertain them, you feed them, you make them feel comfortable in your store, they don't throw a tantrum when mommy and daddy says, I want to go to the nursery. They say, oh, great, I can go see the fish in the pond, and I can go see a story that's being told, or the animals out back. Maybe you can't advertise to Generation X, but you can sure get them in your store. Maybe not always when you want to sell them product, but they still have to know where your store is and feel comfortable there, so that they say, I think I'll go there instead of Depot for that bag of fertilizer, because they seem nice and I have a question I would like answered. So there is a way to reach those people.
Yeah, I think you're right that the millennials, they crave genuine relationships, because so many of their relationships are online and with, not face-to-face. But it's the same as 2 generations ago, where people really crave to know the guy at the hardware store or the paint store. And that generation you're talking, they do crave those relationships. Whereas my generation, we're just in and out doing shopping real quick and not really desiring that. I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah, and as some of the points that Bob made, we're going to get into in the trends area. But just to continue on with the millennials, and this is not plant brands, they just identify with brands, and they're willing to pay more. They're living at home with mom and dad. They're all about status of certain things. Like we said, their screen time and then wanting to get out, but they're starting here. One study that I want to just throw up there, 40% of millennials said they were willing to pay more for a brand or a product that reflected the image they wish to convey. So like I say, it's about their status. Non-millennials, only 25% said they pay a little more for that.
Let me address that, Tim.
Sure.
There's really an interesting occurrence with brands, particularly with millennials. Boomers used to take the image that the brand had, let's say Mercedes-Benz, and if they drove that type of car, that reflected who they were. Millennials, what we're seeing is they identify with a brand and impose themselves on that brand and help to shape and create the image of that. And so where for the boomers, the brand was kind of dictated to them what the image was, and what we're seeing, the reverse is true for the millennials. They are imposing themselves on these brands, and it's really an interesting phenomenon for marketing, because the brand then has this malleability, this ability to be shaped somewhat and transform slightly, and I just think it's really, really fascinating.
Yeah, you're right. They have a curiosity of the back room. They want to see the back room. They don't want to just see the finished product. And they've been naming our plants and getting involved in different ways. And so creating opportunities for them to feel like they're a part of building the brand is absolutely huge. And we use social media for that mainly, but you're absolutely right, Bridget, that they want to feel, if they're going to invest in your brand and buy your products, that they want to have a say of your brand. And before, brands were handed down to them, and here's the expectation. But that you can't do that any longer. So they want to feel a part of your brand.
This goes to a little bit what Bob just said about how millennials shop right now, but like I say, it's just where they are at this stage in their life. They grew up with big box retailers, so they're familiar with them. They know what they have to offer. They know what's there. Many of them are shopping at the big boxes now because of low prices and convenience. That's all they don't have a lot of money, so they have to go to a Walmart. I do have, oh, that's my next slide. Many of them shop at Walmart because, not because they want to, but because they have to. Once again, it's a money thing, it's a time crunch. But it's, once again, they know that side. Now it's our job to, as Bob said, let them know what we can offer. You know, they know they have that potting soil, and they know there's somebody there who can answer a question about it. Go to a Walmart or a Home Depot and ask somebody in the aisle, what's the best potting soil for, you know, these plants, and you'll never get the answer. But no matter what they do, they do shop differently, and that's, as we've talked about screen time here. Does this look familiar to anybody? That's the millennial generation. That's what they do nowadays.
But I think that's important because right there, I've got 2 daughters at home, and I think one's in the blue and one's in the green, basically. But you know what? That is the generation coming up, and they're going to shop there. It's not that they're not going to shop with us today in regular channels or in mainstream channels, but this is not going to go away. It's going to just get more and more and more aggressive. I've been at multiple conferences in the last 3 weeks, and what's been amazing to me is to hear the statistics of online, and I know Tim has them in his slides here in a bit, but just the impact that digital means have on sales today. And where 5 years ago when we were in the room, a lot of us would say, you know, it's out there, we've tried it, it's too expensive, it's really not, it's not kicking in, it's not profitable. The same people today are saying that line, that retail line has impacted my business. I've seen 20% growth, 40% growth. We don't have those numbers walking in on the pavement. So I think it's important for all of us to understand it's not going to be one or the other, but there is a new kid in town that's here to stay.
Yeah. And I think with that slide, I think, you know, sometimes we hesitate and say, well, they really shouldn't be using their phones right now. You know, whether it's at a restaurant or whatever. Trust me, you can't stop it. They are doing it in classrooms, at school, under their desks. And so the thing I look at is I look around my town and I go and make a note of the places that people are doing that. Why? Because that business is doing something that's making them feel comfortable. They don't feel that they're being shamed that they're using their phone in that manner. And so it's acceptable behavior. And so are we doing those same types of things in our own business to allow people to do that, where they, you know, are welcome to do it or whatever? Or, you know, is it hassle when someone comes up to the register with a phone in their hand or whatever the case may be? Because oftentimes they do feel intimidated that, hey, we don't fit in here. And so look at places that you see. And so look at coffee stores. What have they done? They realize that those kids probably aren't going to drink coffee that first time around. Maybe it's a hot chocolate or whatever. They changed their product mix at Starbucks to bring in non-coffee drinks to make those people feel comfortable. And the same thing is we have to make them feel comfortable in our garden centers because they will purchase, or their parents will come, or their older sibling or a mentor or someone will come. But it's key on making them feel important and welcome and comfortable versus don't use your phones in this store. And I have literally seen stores that say, please turn off your phone. Please don't have your phone on at the cash register, whatever it may be. And that's really self-serving. That's not about the customer's needs. That's about our needs of processing customers faster. And that is not the approach that will help build a comforting environment for these customers to really feel like they want to spend time in our stores.
When you talk about customers' needs and your needs as a shop owner, historically, we have purchased and presented merchandise and goods to be sold at our store, basically telling the customers, this is what we say is good. And to a certain point, that is your job. But you also have to remember now that as these younger people come in and they have different ideas, if you do not start listening and accepting some of their ideas and changing your product mix and maybe the way you operate your store a little bit more to accommodate them, you will lose them, and when they're looking for that outside time later, they'll find somebody else. It's a sin that people think of Home Depot as the American garden center. It drives me crazy because it's as far from what a garden center should be as possible. And it's our fault if we're not stopping that and saying, look at us, look at what we can provide, and we're listening to you.
And it's, those digital devices, it's, like I say, it's kind of their heart and soul right now. They use it for everything. So for an industry standpoint, the digital age, the smartphone, and I get some stats coming up here, don't look at it as the enemy. Like Marshall said, look at it as an ally, because they're going to use that as a research tool. They use that device to learn about the product, and then they're going to use about it to find out where they can buy that product. It's a tool in hand to give them more information, to make them smarter, to make them more successful in their actual purchase. The boomers, we're still plugged in. We're just not as reliant. Hell, my 74-year-old mom, she's got a smartphone and she's pretty darn good with it, which sometimes irritates me, but that's Mom. That's her job. But it's the new way. It is what it is. Approximately 80% of the people in the U.S. and Canada now have at least one cell phone, and of those people, 70% of them have a smartphone. And that number's not going to get smaller. It's getting bigger, and it's getting bigger faster. 215 million people right now have a smartphone. You're going to add another 22 million in the next 3 years. And it doesn't break down specifically to this industry, but the iPhone 6S that just came out last week, they sold 13 million of those in 3 days. It was worldwide, and once again, it's not, but it just goes to show the hunger for that kind of product is out there. So it's in our best interest to use it to our benefit.
Well, and one other thing that we didn't touch on, there's definitely the buying aspect, and there's obviously the communication aspect for the younger generation. And how do we capitalize on that? Because when you look at that number of 215 million, if you look at, again, what my girls are doing, everything they do all day long, they share. They share with their friends. If they're shopping and they like a sweater, they take a picture of it and they send it to 26 people. That's a really great thing for us to capitalize on. Making sure that we encourage, if you like this container, if you like this variety, if you like this, and that person is sharing with 10 others, who then share with 10 others, that 215 million number becomes very powerful to us, because now from an advertising perspective, we have just pushed messages out, pushed ideas out, all across the country like that. We couldn't do that before.
And that leads right to my next bullet point here. Digital interactions influence 64% of every dollar spent in a retail store. So it talks. I mean, and they love to tell people what they're doing. It shows how shopping is changing as inspiration, information, and decision-making have become decoupled from the physical trip. It starts here and it ends up somewhere else. Hopefully the garden center, like Bob was saying.
When you're talking about that, I hope everybody here is taking pictures of all the new products that they want to purchase from this show, so they can show the people back in the store what they were thinking of, and you can remember it. And it's just such I don't take notes anymore, I take photographs. Yeah. And that's really enough, and that jogs your memory and gives some kind of picture to the people back home saying, this is what I want to promote next season, this is what I was thinking. Because that all gets lost very quickly when you leave a trade show, but you can capture it.
A picture's worth 1,000 words. It's not
inflation, 1,000 and a...
Yeah, exactly.
But we got to make sure those websites are mobile ready. And
Yeah.
I increasingly see, this is really going to be a choke point for people to enjoy that shopping experience. If we don't get things mobile ready very quickly, we're going to turn off a lot of different age groups.
And Google, to that point, Google's got a quick little thing. You can literally type in, is my website ready, or mobile optimized, and there's a quick little link. You just plug it right into your smartphone, and it will give your website a grade. And it will give you points on things to improve it. Very easy things, and Google will walk you through those things. Because I know that we've noticed at Proven Winners that people we used to think went through our front door of our website at provenwinners.com. Less than 9% of our traffic goes that way. 92% of it's all organic Google search. And then 64% of our web traffic comes from a mobile or tablet device. They're not even using a desktop any longer. And so to Bridget's point, if your website's not ready for that, I'd talk to some people, or at least start with Google. And you can do a simple little quick test. It takes 30 seconds on your phone, and it will tell you whether your website's optimized or not.
And to make it faster in the store, give them Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Give them
Sure.
Wi-Fi.
Give them free Wi-Fi.
Because they'll enjoy that experience
Yeah.
even more.
Yeah.
And they'll stay longer.
Yep,
Right.
absolutely.
So that kind of leads right into my next slide here of, as a retailer, you need to provide the consumer with not one, but two experiences. The online experience, and mobile ready being critical right there, because that's where they're going to start. They're going to start online on their phone, on their computer, wherever, to get the education to make that informed decision. And then the in-store experience needs to inspire. It better look a heck of a lot better than it did online, even when they get to the store. They're going to say, well, I want this, it's on my phone. And that's not what this is. You have to deliver at two different levels to these people to meet their expectations.
And I think, Bridget's absolutely right. Provide them with Wi-Fi, but use it as an opportunity to capture data. You can ask them their favorite flower color. You can ask them for their email address, and maybe they win a prize or something. But I know, I've got a 13-year-old daughter who just got a phone, but prior to that, she was always looking for hotspots. So she knew every restaurant that had a free hotspot. And whenever we went out to eat, she'd say, only the places that had free Wi-Fi, so that she could get on and look at things if she didn't know an ingredient on the menu or whatever. But that's what this generation is looking for, and they're expecting it to be free. So offer it as a service, but collect data back from them. Learn something from them. It's a great opportunity.
And I think asking them for a recommendation, increasingly the research shows that most of us make purchase decisions based upon the recommendations of complete and total strangers. And we are not asking enough people to make positive recommendations or recommendations at all about our businesses. So we need to be encouraging that, which is going to help to feed more traffic, hopefully, for the positive reviews.
Yeah.
I think that's huge, Bridget. If you're shopping, and just going back to the very beginning of the challenges of not feeling comfortable, people come into a garden center, and there's, just look at all the new varieties here and the new flowers. You get overwhelmed very quickly, right? Which one do I like? Do I want the bright? Do I want pastel? Do these two work together? If in the retail experience, we can build into our staff simplicity, but confidence. If I'm going to come in and I have a sun area and I'm looking for this, if we can help that individual provide an experience of confidence that tells the consumer, if you like that, one of our most popular choices is this. They don't need to learn every single variety in the shop, in the store, but they need to have, in my world in college it was called Cliff's Notes. Now it's Sparks Notes, but there's a very abbreviated piece that can really get you through life. And it's important that we make sure everyone has that. If we're a grower, we need to make sure our retailers know these are the 3 go-tos. When in doubt, these are it. As a retailer, we need to have those in different categories so that experience is one that's very flawless and very seamless. When I come in, I get an answer, and then I'm out the door. Now I'm a happy consumer.
Okay, so we've talked a little bit about the demographics. Now let's talk a little bit more about the trends, some of the hot spots, hot buttons for what people are buying right now. And what it basically boils down to, like I said at the beginning, it's the who, what, where, when, why, and how. Where do they live? How do they live? How much space do they have? How much money do they have? How much time do they have? Things like that influences everything they do. So the trends we're going to address right now are I don't think there are any surprises to anybody, but it'll give you a little better understanding. The hot topics and that people are buying now, the edibles, outdoor living, and small space gardening. The plants and dollars, we'll get into that a little bit later. The good thing is consumers are really still hungry for edibles. We've seen it growing for the past 5 years. It's the only category in green goods that has grown for the past 5 years. According to this market research study, 65% of the homes that do garden plant some kind of edibles. It may be vegetables, herbs, fruits, berries, but it's the category that people are most in tune with, I think, right now. It's you can go back to the agrarian society that we grew up in and farmed urbanization. People are just, like I say, comfortable with the category. And they do it for a couple of reasons here. They want to lower their grocery bill. This, I think, is still a reflection of coming out of the last recession. I'm going to plant my own tomatoes. It'll be cheaper than buying them at the store. Little they know, if they were to price things out, that may not be so true, but let them think what they want to think. Health. They want stuff that's good for you. Mom was always right. Eat your vegetables, are good for you. Well, Mom was right. Grow fruits and herbs, veggies. They have the antioxidants, extra vitamins, and it's good exercise if you get out there in the veggie garden. Vase to table. It's two products for the price of one. Basically, it may look good on the table, on the patio, and it tastes good too. So it's they get the full experience with the product. Family time, as we've talked about, growing it, veggies, it's a great way to get kids involved. And once again, planting that seed, they're going to be your future customers. So if you get them, as Bob said earlier, you get the kids in now, hey, Mom, can we go to the store that Grandma took us to, last year? It self-perpetuates itself. And some people want to know where their food comes from, concerned about food safety. They hear these food poisoning, salmonella, in food processing plants. If they grew it in their own backyard, they know exactly what's in it, so they have their own sense of security there. Then there's the pride and accomplishment. They want to eat and drink what they grow. Fresh picked herbs to make their own certain salads, tomatoes to make sauces, berries for smoothies. It just keeps going on. Especially millennials, once again, it may not be a brand, but it's a reflection of them and the process, as we talked about before. They see it as an extension of themselves, this food that they've grown. And then there's the exclusivity, foodies, the food movement out there is still a hot topic. They want to grow their own, grow stuff that you can't buy in the store, or it's their own custom thing to make their own secret sauce, to make their own grapes for home brewed wine or beer. Because, like I say, the food has a lineage to it. It comes with a background check, and once again, it validates the things they want people to know about. And people that grow food, they like to talk about it. Once again, not just so much on the cell phone and taking a picture of the tomato they grew, but they like to go out and they brag. They just tell people what they did, why they did it. The social media is a great place to see what people are doing. It used to be, let me show you a picture of my grandchild in my wallet. Now, hey, check out my Facebook page to see what I grew in my garden. And other people read that stuff to make their decisions when they go out to the garden center. So it's a hot category for people to jump into. And I was able to pull out this list from the National Garden Association. I couldn't find a top 10 edibles list. I can only find veggies. No surprise, tomatoes at number one, cucumbers, they're all there, but this is what America's growing when it comes to vegetables in their garden. And then Bridget, I think I'm going to turn this one over to you. This is your research that you've done a little bit on.
Yeah, so we've been a little curious about consumer perceptions of brands, and I haven't seen a lot in the scientific study area about plants and plant brands. So both 2014 and earlier this year, we looked at both online and in person. We're doing some really cool stuff with eye tracking, but we use digitally identical plants, and that's a really important point here. Most of the people made their decision primarily based on what that plant was. So 44% of the decision, shouldn't be surprised, what the plant is. But what was interesting to us was when we looked at, and this is kind of extracted, if you really want to know the stats, I'll tell you later, because that's what I like. But anyway, price and brand ended up equally important in the purchase decision, and many people think that price is, that headline. It really shouldn't be. And we also looked at container color, which was not a really important contributor to the decision. But the fact that we've got some evidence now that price and brand are kind of standing shoulder to shoulder in terms of their relative importance in the buying decision, I think really will make the disbelievers maybe sit up and take a little bit more note. The colors of the containers, some colors detracted, some colors added, but I want to point your attention to that bottom line. And what we were able to do was to extract how much value consumers saw. Now again, digitally identical plants. We had 3 different real national brands, and their added value, perceived added value, ranged from 1/4 cent to 15 cents. And I want you to also notice that the plant that didn't have a branded container was perceived to be 5 cents less in value than any of the branded plants. So now this is plants in space. One study doesn't answer all questions, but now we've got some pretty reliable objective evidence that shows us that the brand for digitally identical plants can influence perceived value. Some of the work that we did this year, we created a fake brand. We put a unicorn on the pot to see if we could, kind of replicate this stuff. And in fact, we did. When something was on that container to help distinguish one plant from another, again, digitally identical, we got a bump in perceived value. So brands are having an impact. Psychologically, they do influence consumer choice. Not all consumers, and we'll see a little bit more of that in a later slide.
Moving on to the next trend, outdoor living. They're living inside out now. It's where people are moving. Got a couple stats here. Once again, and this is the up and coming category, so that helps us here. 62% of millennials and 46% of Gen Xers are spending more time outdoors. Us baby boomers, I think we've spent our time outdoors, so we don't want to go out as much anymore. But this goes back to that slide I showed at the very beginning, where 75% of people think it's important to spend time in their yard. Of that, these people really want to, the millennials and Gen Xers are really hopping on that bandwagon. And then 85% of millennials and 83% of Xers love the outdoor rooms. Once again, it's an extension of their house. It makes their house larger. It makes their house, gives them more flexibility to do things with their outdoor living. But once again, it's a great opportunity to appeal to the newer demographics out there. And for them, once again, they may not be gardeners. It's just their lifestyle. They're living their life outdoors. If they're going to do that, the products that this industry produces, it's a perfect place to use as accessories, not as plants. It's decorations. It's not gardening.
But I think the important thing there is in the retail environment, that's where we've got to make sure, whether it's through display or finished product, we've got to have the right products to be the accessories.
Right.
Because that's different than the benches and benches and benches of plants. If we expect the consumer to come in and take the benches and benches and benches of plants and make the accessory, that's where we're going to lose them.
Right. Yeah. It's a whole different way of thinking at every level of the process.
Well, it's mental energy they don't want to expend.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. But like I say, it's a huge category. $7 billion will be spent this year on outdoor decor. Like I say, because they want to decorate. They don't want to garden. They want to decorate the outdoors with live goods. So yeah, it's the plant, it's the container, it's the table it's sitting on, it's how it's arranged, it's what you complement it with. But it just, like I say, they don't know how to garden, but it's almost subliminal. They know that these plants, these products are offering benefits that they want in their life.
And I think it's important when we're displaying, you know, they walk in and they see a table and chairs and they see the price of the whole set with the umbrella and everything. But I've yet to walk into garden centers in the last few years that have a $1,500 garden. This is what $1,500 will buy, because they're walking into Walmart and seeing flat screen televisions all day long, all the time for $4,000 or $5,000. And so they get a sense, and they don't buy a television every time, but they've set the threshold of this is what that would cost. So how many perennials, annuals, and shrubs can I get for $1,500? Because they're making that big ticket item on that patio. They're putting in the pavers, they're putting in the fountains and everything. And I've even seen people have a picture of that outdoor room and it says plants and pots additional.
Right.
Well, what is the additional cost?
Right.
What is the cost for the whole thing? Because it sets that thing as they're thinking along, you know what, I got to save up for this. That's okay. But as Bob said earlier, it's not the process. They want the dream.
Right.
They want, and if we're not telling them the price of the dream, they don't do it. You know, fairy gardening took over. You know, a lot of people got into fairy gardening because it was an ends to a mean. They could see the whole thing. They knew exactly all the pieces. They knew exactly how much that thing would cost. And they didn't have to price out every single little thing. And the same thing, we have to look at our outdoor rooms in the same way, or our garden. Price the whole thing. Some people want to know that and just say, I'll take it. You've made the decisions. You pick the best of the stuff, sun or shade, and I can walk out and I don't have to spend a lot of time here. And oftentimes I think we think that in order for the customer to like our store, they got to spend more time here. That's not the millennial customer. They don't want to spend more time there necessarily. But if you can solve their problems and give them something for $1,500 or $800, they will think you're $1 million solution.
Put them on that path to success. Help them make the decision for them. They're not bashful about that. And that just leads to what Marshall just said. Some of the categories, you know, it used to be a picnic table on the patio. Now it's dining rooms, outdoor kitchens and bars, built-in barbecues, fire pits, outdoor theaters. And I've got a few pictures here. It started out with a picnic table, and now you got a big, you know, $1,000 grill over here, plants, the whole thing. Can't see. There's an outdoor bar here. It used to be, grab a couple beers out of the refrigerator, and we'll sit in some lawn chairs on the patio. And it's a little different now. This one's actually got. It's hard to see in the slide here, but it is a home theater and a bar and a kitchen all in one. I don't know what the price tag is, but I want that at my house. I know that. And then we also just the outdoor fire pit. There's just so many different opportunities, and once again, it's an extension of today's consumer, or the millennials and Gen Xers. They want this, so we can help them achieve it with our products.
Tim, could you go back to that? I want to interject a point here. Something that I've seen not nearly enough is crossing the botanical lines. You know, Marshall talked about giving them the dream. I think we're so afraid to mix flowering shrubs or small trees with perennials, with tropicals, with annuals. I really think today's customer does not care what that botanically is, tree, shrub, perennial, annual. When we can integrate, you know, you think about what they're willing to spend on the dream here. If we can integrate in a handful of things and cross botanic lines, I'm sure tropicals are selling well for many of you, and the customer doesn't care that it's going to die. And I think a perennial in with an annual, in with a flowering shrub, as long as it's well done, priced appropriately, I really don't think the consumer's going to care that that container does not overwinter. And guess what? We can sell another one next year. I think we've got to get over our fear of botanic lines and integrate those products a lot more, because there's really cool stuff that could be combined.
Out of hundreds and hundreds of containers that we plant up to sell to customers, I haven't seen one that was strictly annuals or perennials of this. Every one is a mixture, and the amount of what we would call houseplants foliage has increased. And it amazes me what they're doing with small conifers in these mixed planters. They're beautiful. And, if one thing lives and 3 of the plants don't, and they bring the planter back next year to be planted, we're more than happy to freshen them up and replant it, or they can do it at home. But the days of petunias with a Dracaena spike in the middle and some alyssum on the side is over.
Right.
That's not here anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Instead of having the list of top 15 plants for container gardens, it needs to be top 15 plants for outdoor living patios.
Right.
Because that list, to your point, is very different. They do want the tropical look because that's what they're seeing on vacation. They want to bring that in. They want the calicaceas, the elephant ears, and all that. And oftentimes we're just still in our little container garden world. Yeah.
Friedl Oasis, we have 100 plants in the backyard. None of them are in the ground.
Yeah.
They're all pots, and 60 of them had to come in last week because they're not winter hardy. So,
Yeah.
but
Right.
that's the look people are really trying to get, and we can help them pretty easily and profitably.
I mean, I mentioned earlier, moving the indoors out, it's moving the indoor plants outdoors even, and then moving, yeah.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, you got to make them think different. And then small space gardening. Not everyone has this, I put up all those nice pictures of outdoor living. Not everybody has that. They don't have the time, they don't have the space. So small space gardening is getting bigger, and it's a great opportunity. I've got a couple numbers here. Multifamily dwellings continue to grow. Like I said, we hit a recession, we had the housing market crash. The housing market's bouncing back a little bit. 14% of all the suburban housing is multifamily units. People are living in these places, they don't have a lot of space. And the National Association of Home Builders said multifamily construction starts will increase 30% this year. We're getting a lot more condos, apartments, townhouses, you name it. But it's once again, it's not a backyard, it's not a patio. This is where people are living, but they want to take advantage of it. So, this is what they're living in now. This is the reality of a lot of American consumers. And then they have this dream, but that dream is, hell, we all want that. I want that on my house. And I have an acre of property in my yard. But it's not, it doesn't have to be that. It's not realistic for most people to have a balcony that looks like that. And it can actually discourage people. Oh, I can't grow that, so I'm not going to grow anything. We need to encourage them so, their gardening reality is not the balconies full of hanging baskets. This may be their reality right here. Just a few containers stuck on their balcony, but they're making the most of the use of their space. Tomatoes growing here. It's, once again, I apologize for the photo. You got edibles and ornamentals. They want the green goods. They don't have roof. They don't have a patio, but there's their outdoor living right there. But they've accessorized it nicely. It's the new norm for, it's where they got to start somewhere. So this is where they're starting. So I threw this up there. They have the desire, but they don't have the space. So the garden could be on the balcony, windowsills, vertical gardens, up on top of the roof. I've got a picture coming up. It'll be a community garden on the roof. You meet your neighbor up there. Miniature and fairy gardening, that's a whole different panel discussion, but it's an opportunity to get new gardeners, children, the whole thing, but it's small space. Basically, it's wherever they have space, they're going to find it. So here we go. I've got all kinds of pictures, right on the kitchen window. There's the community garden up on the roof. Got the herb garden right there in the kitchen. Here's the ultimate, right next to you talk about your spice garden, right next to the stove. Vertical wall. That's the only space they have on their balcony, but they made a nice wall hanging. And then miniature gardening. Like I said, Lawn and Garden Retailer, we've done 3 or 4 webinars now on miniature gardening, and the popularity just amazes me. And the prices, the profits that are out there. If you want to learn a little more about that, go to Lawn and Garden Retailer's website. You can listen to these webinars and learn from others' experiences of what to do and what not to do and how to make some decent money.
Tim, the other thing I want to say about small spaces, to me, sometimes I don't think we think about this as much as we should. Even the picture you had of the balconies up there, when I saw the original slide and I looked at that, and clearly that's a portion of a building, there were 12 balconies. And the next slide, you showed an image where one of those balconies had pots, and albeit I know in this room and in this world we can get better product on that balcony, but just...
You got to start somewhere.
But start there. There were 10 pots on that balcony. So that's 12 balconies, 10 pots, that's 120 plants. That's 120 units on part of that building. Now get that on every building and put that on those 10 pots on all of the balconies across the street and down the road. There's some serious units to be had by getting people going. And those, when we can do those units well, when we start to do a better job where you can come in and pick up a unit pre-done, ready to go, that unit is also a gift. I'd love to see a show of hands. How many people in this room have given a plant as a gift this year to somebody? It's interesting, I did that a couple weeks ago, an industry forum, and it's surprising, and got a lot of laughter actually in the room of how many hands did not go up. Because we don't necessarily give gifts all the time. We don't have a lot of items all the time ready to go in multiple channels to give as a gift, and if our industry doesn't do that, it's hard to get the neighbor across the street to bring that plant as a housewarming gift or the plant as a hostess gift when you come to dinner instead of the bottle of wine.
One of the easiest plants to give are herbs because most people recognize them, they know what to do with them, and the leap from the plant to the plate is not that big.
It's a great idea.
So yeah, small space gardening, it's a starting point, and it could be a launching point. But like I say, when they move to the larger homes, they've already been bitten by the gardening bug, and when they have the space, they'll spend money. But they got to start somewhere, so why not on the balcony? Then I always throw this one out. Then there's a really small space gardening. You can do like this guy. That's now I throw these numbers up there. It's just this is the USDA census, just to give you an idea of the trends of what people are buying. I don't think this comes as a surprise to anybody. The USDA census is not the end-all be-all, but it's a representation of the 15 top producing floriculture states, and obviously bedding plants come in number one at 1.82 billion, potted plants at 788 million, foliage. Like I say, it just gives you an idea of where the money is being spent in the big states. Pennsylvania does fall in the top 15, so it'll give you an idea of what's happening here. Some of the categories, mixed combinations, the ornamentals and edibles. Ornamentables, we like to make up words in the publishing industry. Succulents are hot, and the miniature fairy gardening. I know, Marshall, you guys have done a lot of research with combinations at work and things like that. So would you care to comment on just what you're doing with in the combination world?
Yeah, I think a couple of things that we saw with combinations. We put up 6 to 10 combinations every year for consumers to vote on for our national combination, and not only do we track flower and color preferences and learn that purple and pink are her favorite colors, but one of the things that we noticed during the recession was she didn't like the hot colors, that she went toward pastels and more muted colors, and certainly blue was a hugely favorite color during the recession. But now what we see is her desire for, and why I say her is 93% of the customers who buy Proven Winners or say that are women. And so there are men, of course, but large degree it's women. But they're wanting the hot colors back. But for the first time now in about 6 years, some of the top rated combos were ones that had mixed foliage, that had no color, no flowering in there at all. And so that wasn't happening before. And so whether it's a succulent or it's a sweet potato vine or something like that, those have become much more popular. The other thing that we were asking people was the size of their containers, and 10-inch containers were the biggest volume ever for hanging baskets. And now preferences are, for them to be successful, they know that they have to start with something larger. And so 14-inch is a great size. You know, the 12 inches is nice to get in there, but if you're in a 14-inch, that's a sweet spot. That's a spot that not everybody's in. Also varying the sizes, not just a white 14-inch, a square pot, a corapot or something. And so those things are important. And then lastly, one of the things that we did is we put up 150 hanging baskets that were all different. And then we did 3 different displays where there were only 4 different types of hanging baskets. And in most garden centers, we would see a whole bunch of different ones. And when we asked the customers as they're exiting out, when they were looking at hanging baskets, we asked what their point of contention was or their frustration. And they said, overwhelmingly, my biggest problem with your hanging baskets is I cannot find 2 that are exactly the same. Because I'm going to put one on one side of my door and one on the other. And I have to look through all your 150 hanging baskets and I cannot find the exact one. And it's frustrating for them. And so when we gave them choices of just 4 or 5 or did an end cap with all of one hanging basket type on there, and that changed every single week, that was shopped a lot more than the rack of 150 where we took in pride in having all sorts of different designs. They didn't like that at all. And it didn't create a unified display for them, and certainly that. One other last thing is we put a whole bunch of hanging baskets in front of consumers that were millennials. And we asked them what their favorite color and what was their favorite hanging basket. And to our shock, there were 10 or 12 of these gals, and to our shock, they said none of them. And I was like, well, do I have the wrong colors? Do I have the wrong plants? Do I have the wrong size? And they said, you know what? I have no place to hang a hanging basket. My mom's got a porch. I don't. And I said, well, did you know that you can either take the hanger off or cut it? They were like, oh my gosh, you can do that? So we created a whole YouTube video. This past year, our #1 most watched video was transforming a hanging basket into a container garden. The thought had literally never crossed their mind. And so when we look at those things, I encourage you to bring in those people and just have them walk through your shop and ask them questions and take notes, because they think about this way differently than we do. But if you're not willing to ask the question, you're not going to learn the answer.
Well, you simplified the process twice for them.
Yeah.
You cut down the number of choices,
Yeah.
so I can make a choice faster,
Yeah.
and you showed them how to make it fit their situation. And that way, it doesn't take much brain cells to make
Yeah.
that choice.
Yeah.
I'm sure we sell more hanging baskets to go in the ground than to hang.
Yeah.
You
Absolutely.
know,
But
and
you
as-
taught them.
And as far as mixed containers, if we have mixed baskets, if we have 500 or 600 out there starting on a Saturday morning, we probably only have 4 styles to choose from.
Yeah.
That we have decided this is a good color combination. We have them grown for us. And, you know, they last well. And
Yep.
I took a basket home this summer to trial a new one to see what we're going to do for next year. And, you know, a little bit of time and effort there. You make their decision for them.
Yeah.
Don't give them an assortment, give them a selection where you have selected the best from that big assortment.
Yeah.
And you're doing them a favor, because
And the customer will say, you know, where did you get that? Well, then they can go and find it back at Hicks. They
Yeah,
know exactly what it is,
Yes,
versus
yes,
you'll
yes.
never find it there again, you know, and so, yeah, that's great.
Yep.
Well, we're about out of time, and I'm gonna call an audible here. Bridget has a couple of really good research study slides here that are going to take a little more time than what we have available right now. So Bridget, if you could answer questions if anybody has them afterward, just to...
Yeah, just let me give you the
Like,
10-second
yeah.
take-home message. So 60% digitally identical plants said the quality was equal. What fascinated me was the 28% who said not equal and the branded plant is higher quality. That was the big surprise.
And then on the neonic situation?
Yeah, consumers are very interested, and you can get a little bit of a price bump for some eco-friendly things, and I can fill you in on what their take is on neonics and some other things, but it's the very vocal minority that's causing the stir.
The key thing on this issue, and having gone through this, July 7th, I'll never forget it, July 7th of 2014, over 50,000 people hit Proven Winners website and social media and just said, get rid of, return all your Proven Winners plants, they all kill bees and blah, blah, blah. And it's furthest thing from the truth, of course. And they also said we were owned by Monsanto, and it was published in the newspaper and blah, blah, blah. But the key thing that we learned from that is we didn't tell our story online. So they were led to make up their own assumptions. So if you are doing organic, or if you're doing neonics, or you're doing XYZ, make sure you're telling that story. Make sure that that is online for your website for them to read what you're doing with pollinators. Maybe you have a beehive on your property. Maybe you're making honey. Maybe you're donating. And make sure your employees know exactly how your plants are treated, and maybe some vendors are bringing some in or whatever. But if you don't tell, they will make up their own tabloid stories.
And we tend to be,
won't be favorable.
And we tend to be very reactive and not proactive, and consumers will migrate and make better choices, more informed choices, when we are proactive with that information. We're good stewards of the environment. Many of us were bad at telling that story.
Yeah, yeah.
And with that, I'll bring it to my last slide here. Just something I like to leave with everyone. You're not a garden center. You're not a grower. You're a lifestyle provider. The game has changed. There's a lot of opportunities out there. Take advantage of what we've done in the past. Learn from the past. Use it for the future. Sell the benefits. Don't sell the products. Don't sell a petunia. Sell the benefits of that petunia. There's so much that this industry have to offer. It's so much fun to be a part of this industry that I applaud all of you for doing what you do, because you sell a lifestyle and you make life better. And I thank you for that. And I thank you for your time today.